Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Icing on the Skate podcast. Hello everyone, how are we doing? It's me again, your boy. Joining me, of course, is that guy over there, Chris Gadsby. How you doing, Chris?
Hiya.
How are you? You good?
Yeah, busy weekend, but yeah, all good.
Good. And he's back. He's ready to talk some more Elite League, so you can't really
I'm ready
complain,
to
really, can you,
completely
folks?
stump Odd Man with my quiz of the week.
Oh, yay. So, I've got to be perfectly honest when we start this live stream today by saying it's been a very, very quiet week regarding the news in the Elite League. Either none of the news has been released yet for this week, or there's nothing for the Elite League to talk about, because other than the games that took place this week, there's really nothing else to talk about. Like, I looked through the entire catalogue of news and Department of Player Safety. They haven't said anything for 2 weeks,
No.
which is kind of worrying. The player of the week, who we were going to talk about, who they haven't announced yet, or they might announce during the stream. Any interesting articles, any sponsorships, anything else. There's nothing. There's literally nothing. So,
Which
that
means we
does
get to
give...
ramble on for a bit more.
Absolutely. That means we get the opportunity to discuss some of the games and some of the teams in more detail. And we now have a play under review topic for the
Woo!
first time this season. So
Yeah!
we'll give that a go at some point. So, like we always do, Chris, let's begin with the fixtures that took place this last weekend. Take it away.
Right, we're going to start in the Elite Ice Hockey League. Saturday, the 21st of September, the Sheffield Steelers 4, the Guildford Flames 1, Cardiff Devils 2, Glasgow Clan 6, Five Flyers 6, Coventry Blaze 3, and on Sunday, the Sheffield Steelers 3, the Glasgow Clan 4, the Belfast Giants 3, the Nottingham Panthers 0, the Dundee Stars 5, Manchester Storm 3, and Guildford Flames 4, Fife Flyers 2. Into the Challenge Cup, which is beginning to take shape quite nicely.
Yay.
Thursday, Guildford Flames 3, Cardiff Devils 4 in overtime.
That sounded like a great game.
It did. Saturday, Belfast Giants 3, Dundee Stars 4, and Manchester Storm 1, Nottingham Panthers 2. And just the one game on Sunday, Coventry Blaze 5, Cardiff Devils 1.
Wow.
Do you want the standings?
I do have them here, but yeah, go for it. I don't have the Challenge Cup standings, so yeah, go
That's
through all the
fine.
standings. We'll talk about it in more detail.
We'll start with the league then. Top of the table, the early pace setters are the Fife Flyers
Which
with
is
6
an
points.
interesting choice. Well, I wouldn't have predicted it personally, but fair play to them.
No, 6 points there for the Five Flyers from 4 games. Sheffield Steelers 6 points from 5 in second. The Glasgow Clan 4 points from 3 in third. The Panthers 4 points from 4 in fourth. The Manchester Storm 4 points from 3 in fifth. The Belfast Giants 3 points from 2 in sixth. The Dundee Stars 3 points from 4 in seventh. The Cardiff Devils 2 points from 2 in eighth, the final playoff spot. Guildford Flames in ninth, 2 points from 3 games played, and the foot of the table early on, the Coventry Blaze 2 points from 4 games in 10th. Into the Challenge Cup. This is where obviously it starts to get interesting. So, Group A. Top are Dundee, 6 points from 4 games. Fife in second, 2 points from 2 games. Clan in third, 2 points from 4 games. And the Giants bottom, 2 points from 2 games. In Group B, it's the Cardiff Devils top, 4 points from 3 games. The Guildford Flames, 3 points from 3 games. And the Coventry Blaze, 2 points from 2 games. In C, no changes in the standings. Anyway, the Sheffield Steelers 4 points from 3, the Nottingham Panthers 4 points from 3, the Manchester Storm no points from 2.
Okay, so some interesting teams in interesting positions. Of course, early disclaimer once again, very early on in the season. It's now technically week 4 in the season, so we're pretty much a month into the Elite League 1920 season. Most teams haven't even hit 4-5 games yet played, so still very, 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 very early on. So we're going to talk about the teams that have surprised us and the teams that we kind of, whether their winning or losing streaks might continue for the rest of the season, if it's a sign of things to come or just early season slumps or early season hot streaks. That's going to be our play under review topic. But before we get to that, I am very impressed with the Five Flyers. They have done a fantastic job this season so far, by the looks of it. Second in their group in the Challenge Cup, top of the league. Not a team I would have expected to be in that position, which I'm quite impressed with. And I love how competitive the league has been early this season. Like, we haven't had any clear front-running teams. Like, we haven't had, let's take Sheffield, for example. They've played 5 games. They haven't gone on a 5-game winning streak, you know. They're not sitting on 10 points already. So every single team, I mean, of course it's early days. There's only 4 points separating first and last, of course, because some teams have only played a handful of games. But I'm liking how there's so much parity in this league. You cannot guarantee a win in this league anymore because the sides are just so good, and I love it.
Well, put it this way. So the most that anybody's played, I think, is Sheffield, who have played 5 in the league and 3 in the cup, so 8 games.
Yeah.
But even you can still treat them as 2 separate entities. So
Absolutely.
take the league on itself. The Sheffield Steelers have the most with 5. Quite a majority have played 4 or 3.
Yeah.
Even at this early stage in the season, nobody is unbeaten.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody has lost a game.
I would be really interested to see how that stacked up against previous seasons in the Elite League. To see, like, I mean, it's going to be a near impossible stat for us to find, especially on the stream. But I would be really interested to see how that stacks up with, say, like, the last 5 years of the Elite League. Just to kind of see the progress that's been made. And one thing I would like to highlight, which we can talk about in more detail later, is the Glasgow Clan. We talked about them quite a lot last week. I believe you brought it up, Chris. The question of should Glasgow Clan fans maybe begin to panic with how well they hadn't played. They had
and then they go and win away at Cardiff and win away at Sheffield.
Exactly, and they had a 4-0 lead on Sheffield as well after the first
period. They
did
at the end of the first period, yeah.
So, I mean, they have come back and gone, you don't need to worry, guys, we're still in capable hands. Sometimes it just takes some teams a little bit to figure out the new system, especially since they've got a new coach there this year in Fitzy, which is awesome. But yeah, I still very much early days for every single team for both good and bad. So that's either a cause for, okay, I really want them to keep going, or, okay, it's early days, we still have time to bounce back. And the Glasgow Clan are a perfect example of that so far. But some interesting, fun games by the looks of it. I mean, the Belfast Giants shutting out the Panthers. That was a tough loss for Nottingham. A big performance from their netminder. I can't remember his name now off the top of my head. Was it Carr?
Who's Belfast or Nottingham's?
Nottingham.
Kevin Carr.
Yeah, Kevin Carr. I believe he had, a 48 save performance or something?
48 saves from 50 shots, because the final goal was an empty netter.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, Dundee
96%.
had a fantastic weekend as well.
They did.
They took a win against the Manchester Storm in the league and a win in the Challenge Cup, right?
Yeah, they won away at Belfast in the Challenge Cup.
So 2 Scottish teams, 4-point weekends, you know? Cardiff were absolutely smoked by Glasgow. We have a few Cardiff fans in the Odd Man Rush Discord, and one of them in particular was not very happy with that game. Just how disappointed they were. And as a Cardiff fan, you're obviously not used to that. They've been such a successful team for the last couple of years.
Well, just the 1 for 9 on the power play that game.
Really? 1 for 9? Wow.
1 for 9 on the power play that game for Cardiff.
There's so many opportunities. You've got to have a decent power play. You've got to at least get a couple on the power play. If you have 9 chances, you've got to at least get 2 or 3. You want to, don't you? Absolutely. So we're going to move on to some of the smaller topics that we have. There really isn't many, and then we'll come back into the conversation that we've just been having. Just want to make sure I get them all sorted out and we can have the discussion. So I was going to talk about the Elite League Player of the Week for this last week just gone.
But they haven't done it.
They haven't announced it yet, as far as I'm aware. I checked just before we went live, and
they still haven't done it.
So I guess we'll have to wait and see. We'll probably have to announce them 2 next week, knowing the Elite League. So there's nothing of that, unfortunately. We do have our own players of the week, though, that we can talk about, which I would very much like to talk about. And I think we've made some fantastic choices so far. So, Chris, you know what? I'll let you go first this week. So your
Okay.
player of the week for, I say week 3, because it's technically the third week where most of the teams have played, but it's technically week 4 according to the Elite League. So, Chris, your player of the week.
My player of the week is every single player on the Dundee Stars, but particularly Alex Leclerc, the netminder. Dundee, for anyone who doesn't know, had 68 shots against them away at Belfast on Saturday and somehow still won by 4 goals to 3.
It's absolutely ridiculous.
So Alex Leclerc, 65 saves from 68 for a 95.59 save percentage.
Wow.
Just to put it into perspective, Dundee only had 18 shots and scored 4.
Wow.
And then he followed that up with the home game against Manchester, which of course they won as well. 40 saves in that, 40 attempts, 37 saves for 92.5%. So over the course of the weekend, 108 save attempts, 102 saves for I think it's 94.1%.
Yeah. That's an average of over 50 shots a game.
Yeah.
So bad. Oh, Dundee. Yeah. What are you doing?
But 94.1% save percentage over the weekend, saving ridiculous. 102 out of 108.
102 saves in one weekend. That is ridiculous. Wow. I mean, I would not be surprised if he got picked as the player of the week this week.
No.
I would consider it a very good choice. I mean, if I was looking through players and having a look at who I figured would be the player of the week, that one didn't cross my mind. I obviously skipped the Dundee games, which was a bit silly of me, but wow. What a weekend by him. Like, that's solid. That's really impressive. So a fantastic choice there from you, Chris. For my player of the week, I've kind of gone for the more sort of, I don't want to say conventional choice because the one you chose is a fantastic choice. But I'm going for the one that's kind of the easier to find, I think I'd go for. And that's Marc-Olivier Vallerand of the Sheffield Steelers. Now, he had a pretty good weekend for himself as well. He scored a pair of goals in the Steelers' 4-1 victory against the Guildford Flames. And then he added 3 assists against the Glasgow Clan in their attempt to come back from behind, but an eventual 4-3 loss to the Glasgow Clan yesterday evening. So he had 2 goals and 3 assists for 5 points in 2 games this last weekend. And that brings his totals this season, just in the league, not including the Challenge Cup, with 10 points in 5 games. So he's averaging 2 points a game in his first 5 games of the season. And considering there are 2 other Steelers players that are in that top 5 as well, like the Steelers, they've got obviously one line, and I think it's Vallerand, Dowd, and maybe somebody else. I don't know the Steelers lines off the top of my head, of course. But they're firing on all cylinders. They've got 3 players in the top 5 in scoring already this season, so that's a great start for them. And if you add to that his Challenge Cup numbers, 4 points in 3 games, he's got 14 points in 8 games. So Vallerand is very much living up to the hype. Of course, he spent 2 years ago with the Coventry Blaze and had 41 points in 31 games with them. And he's really off to a fantastic start for the Sheffield Steelers. He's kind of been, considering they've been very up and down to start the season, he's been a bright light, a sign of more hope compared to last year, I would say. Absolutely.
I think what that shows as well is Sheffield's depth, because he's on the 3rd line.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
Third line left winger. He's on the line. I mean, if you look at who else is on the 3rd line for Sheffield, it's Anthony DeLuca, Martin St. Pierre, Marc-Olivier Vallerand, Ben O'Connor, and David Phillips.
Wow, that's a fantastic group.
That was the 3rd line for the loss against Glasgow.
Okay. It's a prime example of a player just, you don't want to move him up because he scored 2 points a game so far this season, but you want to give him more ice time because he scored 2 points a game this season. It's such a difficult balance to try and find because he's obviously got really good chemistry with his other two line mates, which you said were St. Pierre and DeLuca, did you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, so St. Pierre and DeLuca, like, they're obviously got fantastic chemistry going early this season, but then again, you've also got the problem, like, we want to give him more ice time, we want to help him score even more points, and maybe play with some of the players in our top 6, but he scored 2 points a game, so what do we do, you know? So, I thought it was a fantastic
though,
choice.
if they keep him on the third line, because then he's up against arguably weaker people on the ice with him.
It's true, yeah.
That's why he's scoring so much. But then again,
Maybe.
they lost the game, so maybe they should bump him up if he's scoring like that.
But then again, I would argue he's clearly putting up the points. The goals aren't an issue. It's keeping them out.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it is something to do with him, but it's not completely on him. So.
Well, I mean, he had over the weekend a 3 plus minus, plus 3.
No, he had a plus 1 this weekend. He's a plus 3 total.
No, because he was plus 2 against Guildford on Saturday.
Oh, the Elite League says he's 0. I'm looking at the Elite League's website.
Oh, yes, I remember that because the Elite League stats page. So on the Game Center, there's the game sheet and the stats page.
Yeah.
They don't add up.
Okay.
So I actually went onto because I remember doing these Sunday morning. I went onto the actual game sheet and looked for where his number was in the plus and the minus.
Oh, okay, interesting. So there you go.
They don't quite add up between the stats and the game sheet.
So if you're a bit confused about the stats, ask Chris.
I've got a big logbook.
So that's pretty much everything in terms of the news for the Elite League.
Pretty much.
Yeah, and it was our own news. So. They're really, it's been such a quiet week. I mean, there might be some more stuff that comes out later this week. Of course, it's Monday. The games have just taken place. You would have expected maybe a little more, especially, little news articles here and there as the week went on. But no, there was literally nothing. So, before we move into our play under review debate topic, Chris, give me the quiz.
It's the quiz of the week, right? For anyone new to the stream, how this works is every week I get an easy, medium, and hard question from the week's events. It's not always going to be the Elite League, but considering the NHL hasn't started yet, it is the Elite League at the moment.
Yep.
So the easy question's worth 1, the medium is worth 2, and the hard question is worth 3.
You could also do a separate quiz for the NHL when that starts if you want.
I could do, yeah.
I don't see why not.
Okay, right. The easy question.
Right. Before you start, how many points have I got so far? What's my... I'm 2 for 6, aren't I?
You're 4 for 12.
4 for 12. Oh, yeah, because...
4 for 12.
4 for 12?
Because you got... Yeah, because you got the easy question the first week.
Oh, because they're points. Right, got
it. So that was 1 out of 6, and then you got 3 last week to beat Max, so you're on 4 for 12.
But I've answered 2 questions right out of 6.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Okay,
no, you've answered 3 right out of 6.
Oh, solid 50%. That's a decent power play.
Okay, now you've already mentioned this already on tonight's stream, so you should get this one.
Oh, no. Okay.
2 sides got 4-point weekends.
Dundee, Glasgow. Scotland. I got it.
What country are they from? 1
Scotland.
point. Well done.
Scotland.
Yes, well done. Well done. Yes. Right. The medium question worth 2 points.
Okay.
Who had the most power plays over the course of the weekend?
Cardiff.
No, wrong.
No?
No.
Who was it then?
Cardiff had 12 power plays, 9 against Glasgow and 3 against Coventry.
See, that's why I went with 9 power plays in one game.
No, it was the Sheffield Steelers.
Was the Sheffield Steelers?
Who had 11 power plays against Guildford and 4 against Glasgow, 15 over the weekend.
Wow. That 15 power plays?
2 for 11 against Guildford and 1 for 4 against Glasgow.
Wow. That's
Sheffield, just in case anyone is interested, are 14.5% on the power play.
I see. So, hang on a minute. They had half an hour's worth of power play time this weekend.
Yeah, about that. Yeah.
That's ridiculous. That's a quarter of the time they played this weekend.
Yeah, obviously it's just shy of that for the ones where they scored, but yeah,
wow.
pretty much.
Fair.
Yeah, pretty
Wow.
much half an hour.
Who are they playing? They had.
They played. They were at home all weekend. Guildford on Saturday, Glasgow on
And
Sunday.
Guildford's the one where they had 11, right?
Yes.
Guildford. No wonder you bloody lost the game, lads. Come on. You can't give away 11 power plays. What is this, the Nottingham Panthers? Right, anyway, next one.
Oh. Right. You've got to listen carefully to this one because this is the hard one.
Okay.
Right. So there are 4 players in the league
There's more than that, but okay.
who have played
Okay.
every single game
Right.
and done nothing on the score sheet, i.e., no goals,
Oh.
no assists, no penalty minutes, and no plus minus. And when I say no plus minus, I mean never on the ice. Well,
So
what
still
I mean
at
is,
0.
what I mean is they finished every game with a plus minus of 0.
So they're balanced out. Okay.
Yeah, so they've got, if you look at, well, you can't because it's the quiz, but if you were to look at that document, every single column is 0
zeros,
for
okay.
every game they've played. There are
Okay.
4 of them. Just name one.
Name one? Wow. Name. So there's 4 of them. Can I have a hint as to some of the teams they're on?
Okay, yes, you can. So there is 1 for Fife, 1 for Guildford, and 2 for Manchester.
I don't know their rosters well enough. I don't know their rosters well enough at all.
Okay, I will let you look at the rosters on a window that's obviously not the document.
No.
that has the answer.
I don't want any more help other than that. So 1 for Fife,
1 for Fife,
Guildford.
1 for Guildford, and 2 for Manchester.
Oh, I don't know enough players on these rosters. I know this is absolutely wrong. I know this is wrong, but I can't think of anybody else off the top of my head.
Right.
So I'm going to go Eric Lindhagen of the Guildford Flames.
Funnily enough, you're wrong.
Oh, what?
What's Eric Lindhagen done, just out of curiosity? He has 3 assists, a -1, and 4 penalty minutes.
Okay. So I was
So
close.
the answers are you have Chad Smith of the Five Flyers.
Right.
They're number 37, who's played 6 games and done nothing.
Okay.
You've got Cam Brays of the Guildford Flames,
Okay.
who admittedly they've only played 3 games,
Okay.
but he's done nothing. And then at Manchester, you have Jakob Luchtwich, who I'm butchering that name. Luchtwich, isn't it? Or
Welcome to my world, Chris.
and Finlay Ulrich.
I've got to be completely honest. I have never heard of any of those players ever.
Well, that's because they've not done anything to get your attention.
There you go. I feel like they're some of the players that, like, while I was out in Canada over the summer, I'd see it on Twitter and just, like, scroll past it immediately. So,
Yeah.
sorry to you 4 players that have done nothing, but come on, step it up, guys.
So yes, that's so you got 1 point. So you're now what 3 from 9.
I thought that second one would be Cardiff.
Well,
I just
if
thought
you,
it would be.
I mean, the easy question you obviously had a choice of 4.
Yeah.
Well, no, 3 actually, because there's only 1 side in Northern Ireland. In fact, actually 2, because there's only 1 side in Wales.
Yeah.
So you had 50-50 there. The medium, of course, you had a choice of 10 because there was
I
anyone.
got the
in the
second
league.
place team though, right? I was close.
No,
Oh. Great.
because there were teams that had 14.
Really?
Yeah. I think I've lost them now.
Expose them, Chris.
Okay. Well, Glasgow had 13.
13
0
power
for
plays.
8 against Cardiff and 1 for 5 against Sheffield.
Right.
Yes, Guildford had 14. 0 for 6 against Sheffield. 1 for 8 against Fife.
Wait, so they had 6 power plays and gave up 11 penalties.
Yes.
Did they play any of that game in even strength?
I don't know without looking at the game sheet in detail.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, they probably played like the first 2 minutes and the last
Let
2
me have a
minutes of the
look.
game even strength, and then they were just like, nah, let's just play with the man advantage. Why not?
So what did we have? 8 minutes, 11 minutes, 16:07, 16:33, right at the end on 20, 23, 29, 37, 37-34, and then 37-43, 45-48, 51, 53-18, 53-46, 55-50, and 56-55.
So what you're telling me is that they basically played the first 8 minutes without a penalty and then decided to just rip up the rule book and play their own rules.
It does seem that way, it must be honest, yeah.
Yeah, it really does. Well, all right then. Okay, so another quiz from Chris. Thank you very much, Chris, for your wonderful quiz.
Not a problem at all.
So let's move on to our play.
Apparently my audio is funny or something.
Probably.
I've had a couple of people say there's an audio delay or I'm echoing or something.
Oh, I always get audio delays and it echoes through my microphone. There's nothing I can do about it. I've seen that stuff before, guys. So thanks for letting me know that that's a problem. I'm not gonna fix it. It would require me finishing the podcast, tinkering with stuff for like an hour, and then starting up again. And we're already like 30 minutes into the podcast, so like, you know, these things happen. You can hear us. That's the most important thing, right? I mean, I'm sorry that you have to listen to us, but you chose to be here. So anyway, the Elite League, like we mentioned, we're going to go back to our play under review topic. For those of you who don't know, because we haven't actually done one so far this season, the play under review is where we take a certain subject, either from the Elite League or British hockey in general, and there is something else we can talk about, which I'd like to go into a bit of detail with Chris regarding the minor leagues of hockey. We discussed it slightly before.
Right, yeah.
Slightly before the start of the stream. Basically, we just take a topic that we might not have gone into and discuss it quite a lot. For example, last season we did a lot to do with like lower league British teams and crowdfunding campaigns to keep their teams alive, youth hockey and like the growth of British hockey and all the kind of interesting topics that don't really get into the mainstream EIHL news or in the media. So we like to discuss or just give our opinions on how the season's going so far. And that's where we're going with today's one. We're now 3 weeks, technically 4 weeks, because it's week 4 in the Elite League. I think they had one game week 1. So with 4 weeks, we're pretty much a month into the Elite Ice Hockey League 1920 season. Like we said earlier, there's not that much in it between first and last place. Most teams have played 3 or 4 games so far this season, not including Challenge Cup. But we're starting to see some interesting trends early in this season. Some teams doing well to start the year that we might not have expected. Some teams going about 500 that we may or may not have expected. And some teams that have kind of struggled a little bit that we may or may not have expected. So I want to pass this question off to you to begin with, Chris, definitely. So looking at the standings, I'll go through them once more for those of you who forgot. Fife in first place, Sheffield in second, Glasgow in third, Nottingham in fourth, Manchester in 5th, Belfast in 6th, Dundee in 7th, Cardiff in 8th, Guildford in 9th, and Coventry in 10th. Out of those teams and where they're placed at the moment, which ones are surprising you the most, or which ones are surprising you the most for better or for worse? Go for it.
Yeah, okay. I'm pleasantly surprised by Glasgow.
Yeah.
Particularly helped by away wins in Cardiff and Sheffield this weekend.
Yeah.
And they put up a good fight away at Cardiff last weekend, losing only 5-3. I'm considering that apart from opening night, they've been away for the entire season.
Oh, really?
They
I didn't know that.
Again, ice availability is similar to Panthers.
I would imagine so, yeah.
So since September the 1st, they've been away all season and they find themselves in third place in the league and with a game in hand on Fife, which if they were to win would take them joint top of the league.
That's a good point, actually. Like, I didn't know that they'd played away for most of the season.
This is why you should look at the online document.
Absolutely. So the last 23 days, they've been on the road playing in other people's arenas, and they've managed to get themselves in third place.
They are away for another week because they have they are in Nottingham Saturday and Sunday this week.
Oh, yeah.
They do not return home until they play Fife on October the 5th.
So they've spent pretty much the first month of the season away.
Hmm.
That, and considering they're third place in the league with a 2-1 record, that's pretty impressive.
They're also spending pretty much the entire last month of the season away as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so they're cramming on all their home games in a busy period, really.
I mean, if they, for example, they've got 2 more games to play this weekend against the Panthers, that would take them up to 5 games played in the league by the end of September, correct?
Correct.
And if they say they manage to take another win, so they go
They would go,
3 of 5, 6 points. Okay, so they go six
yeah,
points in
or
their first.
they'd go, yeah, so they'd go 4 of 5, 4 of 6. Sorry, no,
No,
sorry,
so
yeah,
so
3 of 5.
so
Sorry,
the
yeah, yeah,
next
three
yeah,
of
so their
five. I'm
next
looking
two
at the
their
wrong
next two
column.
games, if they win one, then they're 3-2, right?
Yes,
Um, Assuming they lose the other game, obviously, we'll say in regulation, just for argument's sake.
yeah, makes it easy.
That's got to be a pretty good feeling for the Glasgow Clan, knowing that they haven't been in their own arena pretty much all season, and they've managed to get themselves 3 of 5 wins in other teams' barns. 4 of 5 wins would be even better for them, obviously.
Hmm.
And like you mentioned, they're not going to be in their own arena end of the season. Of course, that's a long way away, but I
It
think that will give
is.
them a bit of confidence going, we did it first thing in the season. We can do it again. Like if it's coming to mere single digit point differences, like last season did, where like one win in the last week of the season can be the decider as to whether you're in the top of the table or halfway down the table. They probably feel pretty good about that, going, okay, we're capable of picking up some points here in the last month or so, and maybe securing a
Yeah.
top 3, top 4 spot.
What I love about the league, I know it's early days, but last week on the podcast when Max was here, we were saying, do Glasgow need to be worried because they've
Yeah,
lost all but one games? They
yeah.
then pull out the weekend that they have, winning against Cardiff and Sheffield away from home, and that's with 2 players out as well.
Oh, really?
And they're all of a sudden they're third, and with the game in hand could go joint top of the table.
Exactly. So,
And then the
like,
flip side of that is Cardiff,
yeah.
who have, had a poor weekend. They lost to Glasgow at home and Coventry away in the cup, and they find themselves eighth in the league in the final playoff spot. And okay, yeah, they are still top of their Challenge Cup group,
And they've
but
only played 2 games, granted, so.
yeah. So they've got to kind of catch up with that. But the league is, I mean, even at this early stage, kind of wide open. There isn't, teams at the top who've won every game and teams at the bottom who've lost everything.
Yeah, like you said earlier, every single team has lost at least one game. The only difference is the Belfast Giants are the only team to have not lost in regulation. They lost in overtime or a shootout, but every team has lost at least one game.
Yeah,
So like you can't guarantee yourself a win in this league anymore, which you could 2 seasons ago. Like it's kind of crazy how quick and how rapid the rest of the teams or the league as a whole has caught up to each other. Because like take 2 seasons ago, we had Milton Keynes and Edinburgh still in the league, right? Edinburgh was 2 seasons ago, right?
yeah,
Yeah. So and that was the first year Milton Keynes and Guildford were in it as well, weren't they?
mm,
So Milton Keynes were a team that struggled to pick up wins in their first season. I'm pretty sure they didn't have more than a dozen in year one in the league. And Edinburgh, well, those of you who have followed the Elite League for a while, you'll know what the Edinburgh Capitals were like. We made jokes about them pretty much every week. So, like 2 seasons ago, you could have gone, yeah, I'm pretty sure that team's going to win that game, and then you'd be kind of shocked that if they didn't. Whereas now it's like, I think this team's going to win it, but then you look at it and go, okay, yeah, I mean they lost it fair and square.
Well, you wouldn't think that Cardiff would lose 6-2 at home to Glasgow.
Exactly.
You wouldn't think that Belfast would lose 4-3 at home to Dundee when they have 68 shots or
Yeah.
whatever it
And
was.
because they're one of the smaller teams with a smaller budget and less players on the roster compared to some of the other teams.
Yeah, I will admit that although their roster was strong, I did not expect Fife to beat Nottingham, although they were at their home
Yeah.
arena. Glasgow, I think, have done much better than I thought they were going to do on the road.
Yeah.
Manchester, they're a difficult one because they had that really good season a couple of years ago. And then last season, they kind of didn't meet what perhaps was the fan expectation after that first season.
Yeah, because
And this season
they're
as
kind of been
well.
they've kind of been sitting at the bottom of the league for the first couple of years they were in it. Then they managed to get like a top 5 finish, or they came like third or something in the league. I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure
they
they had
did.
like a really good season. But then I think the problem was loads of their players either left the league or joined other teams. Like they were like, oh look, I've played really well. Now let me play for an arena team.
Yeah,
So
and they're
kind of broke
two
up the
and three
squad.
this season. One win, one overtime win, and three losses. But then in the league, it looks much better than that because two of
Yeah.
the three losses they've had this season are Challenge Cup at Sheffield and Nottingham.
Yeah, and I
And
mean,
don't
they're
forget that Manchester,
yeah, go for
Manchester
it.
are in the cup group where they can lose every single group
Yeah,
game and still get into that play-in.
yep. We're obviously not going to go into that right now, but oh, it's so frustrating. But like you mentioned, the Manchester Storm, they're currently 2-1 this season. They've got a win in regulation and a win in overtime. They're 2-1-0. Like they've done all right for themselves as well. The one stat I find very interesting so far this season is the Belfast Giants goals for and goals against. They've played 2 games. They've won one in regulation, lost another in overtime or a shootout. They've only scored 4 goals and allowed 2. Which, I mean, granted, that means that their defense is doing a fantastic job. I mean, their goaltender, Shane Owen, right? It's Shane Owen now, isn't it?
Yep, Shane Owen, yep, he's played every game.
Good thing is, he's obviously, it's either him doing a really good job stopping shots, which is what he's obviously there to do, or the defense are doing a great job of stopping a large number of shots against him, or a bit of both. You
It's
know?
a bit of both. You
Yeah.
look at the goal. Sorry, the shots against. So Glasgow, which they won 6-1, he only faced 23.
Okay.
Manchester, it was 30.
Okay.
Dundee, it was 17,
Wow. Okay.
and Nottingham, he had the 26 shot shutout.
Right. There you go.
So the
So
defense are doing a really good job of limiting the amount of shots that he has to face.
absolutely, but then again, the offense really isn't going. They've scored two. They're averaging 2 goals a game, which I mean, granted that their defense is playing well enough that that's enough for them, but that's not going to be enough for them all season. And of course, Belfast are a team that they have a lot of firepower on that team. They might be showing a little bit of Champions Hockey League fatigue. I wouldn't be surprised.
Potentially, they've got a tough weekend as well, actually, because they've got a Challenge Cup double against Fife, who, of course, are really going this season early
Yeah,
on.
that's a good point. I mean, the Five Flyers, if they keep, like, I mean, if they take both games against Belfast, that's going to impact both teams quite massively.
It is. I mean, if Belfast were to lose both of those games, they're in real danger of not progressing in the Challenge
Absolutely.
Cup.
Yeah.
I mean, particularly when they've got to face Dundee as well, who have beaten them in the Challenge Cup, and that one's away from home.
Yeah.
It could easily come down to a winner goes through against Glasgow on October the 12th, because
Yeah.
the final Challenge Cup group game in Group A is only a couple of weeks away, so we'll have that fairly soon.
Interesting. In terms of some of the other arena teams, the Sheffield Steelers and the Nottingham Panthers, I kind of feel like they're kind of just going business as usual at this point. They're kind of 500, Sheffield slightly above 500. They've had their good games, they've had their bad games, but they're all just trying to figure out how the team works at this point. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
of course, every team's doing that. It's early in the season, but I feel like Sheffield and Nottingham, they're known for doing this. Like,
yeah,
they're a
I mean,
very hot and
there's
cold
been
group of
there
teams.
has been things and stuff mentioned around Nottingham for a few years of win on Saturday, lose on Sunday.
Yep.
And I mean, they have done that the last 2 weeks. But if you look at the games as a whole, Nottingham 4-3, Sheffield 5-3.
Yeah.
So it is like you're saying, they're just kind of, finding their way into it and getting into the swing of, 2 games a weekend because they've had that Well, Sheffield have had that 3 weekends in a row now.
Yeah. Although having said that, the Panthers, if I recall last year, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not 100% sure on this. They got off to a really good start in the league last year, but then December hit and they just fell.
They went unbeaten in pre-season.
I remember that.
Um,
Were they a
and
no, they were a 500 team to start last season, weren't they?
and then
just above.
and then they went on a bit of a run and got to the top of the table, if I
And then
remember.
December hit, yeah.
And then December hit, which is always a dodgy period for the Panthers.
Which we will hope is different this year.
Yes, I do. Yes, and I'm working on the game on Boxing Day and New Year's Eve, so I hope they play well on those games.
Are there going to be some great games to watch?
Yeah,
though,
I'm doing the BBC coverage for those
Nice.
for those games. So that's Coventry on Boxing Day and then Sheffield on New Year's Eve, which is going to be really good.
Of course, wow.
That's going to be really good. But yeah, I mean, obviously, and then Panthers fell off, and Belfast and Cardiff just romped away with it, really.
Absolutely. Now, I would be very interested. Could you imagine if, say, 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, the standings looked exactly the same?
Would I be surprised?
But how? The reason I say how crazy or how ridiculous that would be, if the standings stayed exactly the same, if every team was in the exact same position as they were right now, 2 weeks in the future. Or let's say a month in the future. So each team's played roughly 8 to 10 games, kind of doubled up the amount of games they played.
Okay, yeah.
Belfast and Cardiff would be in the bottom half of the league.
They would. Who have Belfast and Cardiff? Well, they've obviously got the two final Champions Hockey League games in the middle of this.
Yeah, of course.
So Belfast have a double against Fife, Guildford, Dundee. Then they've got their home and away against Lalea. Sandwiched with a Glasgow away doubleheader in the middle of that. Bearing in mind that these the Lalea games are both midweek.
Yeah.
So they have to play Glasgow away on Sunday, October the 13th.
Right.
And then fly to Sweden to play Lalea on the 15th. That's the Tuesday.
Wow, okay.
To then fly back and have a home doubleheader against Manchester that weekend, the 19th and 20th.
That's going to be a busy week for those players. But then again, quite a lot of them are from North America and they're used to playing games in the middle of the week. I think it's the more British cohort.
Cardiff have a similar thing. I made a mistake on the document there, I can see, because Cardiff are apparently playing themselves.
Well, they might be.
So they've got Coventry on October the 6th.
Okay.
That's away. They then have to fly to Frölunda. That's Sunday, October the 6th. Then Tuesday, October the 8th, they've got Frölunda in Sweden.
Okay.
They fly back. Oh, that really is tough. They fly back, presumably on the 9th.
Yep.
The Wednesday, to face Dundee in the league on the Thursday.
Right.
To then face Coventry on the Sunday and then Frölunda at home, which obviously won't be as bad.
Right, okay.
So
whereas, for example, if we bring in the Champions Hockey League into the discussion in terms of, how it will affect Belfast and Cardiff moving forward, which I think is an interesting place to take this conversation, Cardiff are obviously going to feel that's a lot more worthwhile than Belfast at this point. The context being Cardiff have the chance to top their group if they play well enough. They have a chance to clinch a playoff spot, whereas Belfast are very much on the ropes. So the last thing Belfast want is to get completely smoked by who is it? Luleå they're playing. They get Belfast get destroyed by for want of a better term, a superior Swedish side. Then come back and lose a couple more games at the weekend and lose 4 points in the league or the cup. That would just be the worst week of the season so far for Belfast, especially considering they would have been out of contention for the Champions Hockey League, and then they've got to worry about their domestic campaign, and they're going to be I'm not going to say they're going to play awfully, but they'll be a tired side. A lot of the North American players that come over are used to playing games throughout the week, especially if they've played in the AHL or the NHL, obviously. Whereas the British players aren't. They're used to practicing during the week or having the odd Wednesday or Thursday game, but they're used to playing all of their games at the weekend because we have a reduced schedule compared to some of the other leagues. So for Cardiff, for example, if they manage to go there, take at least one win, they're going through to the playoffs. If they drop
Well,
4 points or
that's the
so,
thing.
yeah.
That's the thing because neither of the two sides are out of the Champions Hockey League yet.
Whereas Belfast are very much more on the ropes than Cardiff are.
They are, but both have an opportunity to get through. They can still both get
Yeah.
through. So they've got to play those games and really go for it.
Yeah.
Belfast, okay, yes, it's unlikely. They're 4 points off and they've got to play Luella, who are top.
Yeah.
And the chances of them taking both of those games, which is probably what's going to need to happen for them to go through,
Yeah.
is very slim.
Yeah.
Cardiff, on the other hand, are currently top of their group
Yeah.
and have everything. I mean, they've got that game against Frölunda. Now, I admit that this might, this is not the most likely of scenarios, but say they go to Frölunda in Sweden on October the 8th and win,
Yep.
they're then guaranteed to go through before Frölunda.
I'm pretty sure if they take at least 1 point, I'm not sure if it's a guarantee, but that would put them in a really good position.
It would, but if they win, particularly in regulation against Frölunda away from home, I know it's potentially
it's
a long
highly
shot,
unlikely, but still possible.
they're guaranteed top of the group, whatever. So do you then rest a load of players for when Frölunda come here?
That's a good point.
Because you're guaranteed to be top of the group.
Yeah, no, you would think, or
So-
they want to go, we want to beat Frölunda again, because Frölunda have been a little bit
Yeah.
shaky this year in the Champions Hockey League.
They
I mean,
have.
considering they've done fantastically well, they've won more titles in the Champions Hockey League than any other team. They've won it 3 of the 6 times it's been a thing. So they're used to being in the final. They're used to winning. They've been in 4 finals, I think, and won 3 of them. So
Yeah. I mean, this is a question, it's thrown around, not just ice hockey teams, all sports teams.
yeah,
So would you rather, I don't know if we've got any Cardiff fans in the chat at the moment, but win the league again or have a really good CHL run, a bit like the Panthers, get into the knockout stages, and really have a historic for Cardiff at least Champions Hockey League run.
coming from a non-Cardiff fan perspective, I feel like I could give an outside view to this. They've obviously won the league so many times recently. They've won so many trophies, clinched so many championships over the last couple of years. So, from my perspective, I would like somebody else to win it. As a non-Cardiff fan. Doesn't necessarily have to be Nottingham, as they're my main
Well,
team.
Belfast won it last year, didn't they?
Yeah, but Cardiff still won the Challenge Cup. No, sorry, they won the playoffs, didn't they?
Yeah, I see what you mean. But and from a Cardiff point of view, I suppose they've been in the Champions Hockey League, is it now 3 years in a row? And
Yeah.
they've never got out the group, and this is arguably their best opportunity to get out the group.
Exactly, and I feel like if they could get past the first round of the playoffs, I would much rather take that than them win the league. Not of course that's a bit selfish of me going, Cardiff, you've won it enough times recently, give somebody else a go. Of course they're a pretty fantastic side by elite league standards, and now they're getting some a good reputation on the European scale as well, which is good. That's what we want to see.
Yeah.
I mean, take last year for example. The Panthers made it to the playoffs. They got eliminated.
Yep, they made
by
it to
Zurich.
the round of 16. They played Zurich, yeah.
They got one of the most difficult teams they could have come up against and were still pretty respectable. Then we had the World Championships with Team GB and how well they played there. I feel like Cardiff getting to the quarterfinals would be that would just keep the ball rolling. Which
Would be
which I would
further
love.
than any, EIHL teams got before.
So if you could imagine, say Cardiff top their group, they come across a team that they actually have a legitimate chance against, and let's say, for example, they win. They actually go and win that series and move on. If I was the Cardiff Devils management, that would be fine. If we didn't win the league that year, I wouldn't be upset. Of course, you want to win the league, you want to keep the momentum going, but if going that far in and kind of what it takes from your players in terms of how much they give to the team in order to try and make them as successful as possible and give them the chance to be in that position, I would take that over another league win, because they've shown that they're a fantastic team in the league. They've shown that they're pretty much one step ahead for the last few years. They've got a solid core of players. They've got fantastic ownership that really are willing to put the money in and put the time and invest in not just the team but the culture and the arena and the brand of the Cardiff Devils. So in terms of the Elite League scale, they've already ticked all the boxes. They've already won all of the championships they can win. On an international scale, that would do so much for British hockey. Of course, I'm looking at it from the bigger picture and not just from the Cardiff Devils perspective, but I think
it keeps growing and growing.
If they got to the quarterfinals.
Even if, Panthers got out of the group, Cardiff have got a chance. Belfast, okay, it's unlikely.
Yeah.
But every side, I seem to remember, who was it I think maybe it was the first year of the Champions Hockey League when
it was
Panthers were in it. When Panthers were in it.
Because Braehead have been in it once.
And I think that was the second year.
Okay.
If I remember rightly. But I seem to remember, I was still at school when it happened because I watched the draw in lunch. And I think Panthers, they had some respectable scorelines, but they didn't really do anything.
Yeah.
And it's grown and grown and grown. Panthers got out of the group. Now Cardiff have got an opportunity. We can show as British ice hockey, as a league, that we are growing, the standard is getting better, and we are competing in Europe, which is fantastic. And I think that shows from the from the Champions Hockey League when they did the seeding last year ahead of this season, that we climbed up a place and the Elite League wasn't the bottom.
I believe the French League was the bottom one.
Yeah, because Belfast went into 30. They were 30th, Cardiff. Then there was that team in 31st, and then Belfast, because the Continental Cup wildcard is always seeded 32.
Yep.
But Cardiff, it was not the Elite League, 31 and 32. So it's growing. We're getting there.
Yeah, and we're beating teams in the DEL, which for North American NHL fans will be like, that's nothing. We beat them for breakfast, which of course you do. You have the best players in the world.
But we're not the NHL.
But also we have teams that are going up against some of the best teams in Sweden, which is a decent hockey nation, going up against teams in Finland. Finland won the World Championships last year, right? And I don't think they had a single NHL player on their roster. So, we're not playing against slouches. It's not like the Continental Cup where we're playing against a Spanish team or an Italian team. We're playing against some of the best countries and some of the best teams in the world. The Frölunda Indians are one of the best teams in European hockey history, I would argue. Especially over the last 10 years, they have been fantastic in sort of the hockey world. So to go up and just play a team like that is incredible for us. I remember we both watched the live draw and it's they're up against Frölunda. Why? Because we know that we have such respect for those different countries and how good their hockey nations are. But like you said, we're in a position where we're now starting to see British hockey taken a little bit more seriously. Granted, we're still using a lot of import players. So does the NHL. I'd just like to point that out as well. So does most other leagues in the world, unless they have very strong farm teams and very strong players that play through their system. And I think that, and especially with the World Championships and a UK mostly born and trained in the UK squad, they won one game, but they're still in it for next season. So, that's pretty impressive if you ask me. It kind of shows you, we've talked about this many times on the podcast over last season, how important it's been for British hockey to do so well on the international stage. And now we're starting to reap the rewards a little bit. I remember seeing a few articles over the summer, player interviews and when they were being introduced with their teams. And players are starting to pick up. They're starting to see that, Great Britain's starting to do... So they're starting to make waves in the international hockey scene. Not big waves. We're not the best hockey country in Europe. Of course we're not. We've got a very long way to go if we ever get there. But we're making really positive small steps forwards. And I think them getting to the quarterfinals would be another one of those small steps.
Yeah.
So, I think that's a perfect place to finish up this Play Under review. I think that's a perfect place to finish up our talk about the Elite Ice Hockey League for this
Interesting.
week.
I was just looking at it.
Go
So
for
I'm
it.
on a website of the um, hockey agency website.
Okay.
Just because I just thought I'd type in see how the league ranks, because what they do in FIFA is they kind of rank leagues.
Yeah,
So the Premier League is one of the best in the world,
of
etc.,
course.
etc. So I thought, oh, I wonder where the Elite Ice Hockey League
Okay.
is in terms of ranking.
Okay.
This isn't including the NHL because they've got the KHL as number one.
Okay. So it's like a European rankings.
It seems to be like that, but they've got the AHL in.
Okay, fair enough.
So they've got the KHL, the SHL, the AHL. The Elite Ice Hockey League is ranked 15th, which is the same ranking as the ALPS.
Okay.
It's two below the DEL2, which is ranked 13. Interestingly, this website has the ECHL as ranked 16th.
Wow.
So
Okay.
they have the Elite Ice Hockey League with a better ranking than the ECHL.
Which I mean, we do get a lot of players that have some success in the ECHL or have moved on from the ECHL, having needed a change of scenery. So, yeah, and ECHL teams, they have affiliations with AHL and NHL teams. So like you play well in the ECHL, you quickly move up that ladder. So,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
is
it
pretty
is.
impressive.
It is. Yeah. Yeah, the United Kingdom, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, the 11th best league in Europe.
Which is pretty impressive.
It's
Like
it's
considering how
it's
many
getting
different
there. That's
countries, like
the
we're talking about, like compared to the Switzerlands and the
yes.
Germanys and the Russias and the Swedens and the Finlands and the Danish. Like there's some good hockey players and some hockey teams out there in Europe. We're starting to be we're kind of a footnote in the conversation now, which is a lot more than we were, say, 5 years ago. We weren't in the
Yeah,
conversation at all, whereas we're a bit of a footnote in the conversation now.
yeah.
So anyway,
And
let's move on
EA
from the Elite
Sports,
Ice
I will
Hockey
buy
League.
your NHL franchise again when the Elite League's in it.
So we'll move on from the Elite League. We'll move across the pond to the NHL. So for those of you who don't know what we do with this podcast in the NHL, we just talk about some of the interesting news articles, some of the more recent ones that we've seen, discuss them a little bit. We're not going to talk about specific teams in much detail, especially because the season hasn't started. We like to go through the
Yeah. And if
standings.
we went into teams in detail, we'd be here all night.
Absolutely, and probably tomorrow.
Yeah.
So we usually go through the standings once the season actually starts. We go through hot streaks, cold streaks, any interesting bits of information Chris and I have picked up over the week. But it's training camp and preseason at the moment, so there's teams playing, veterans on PTOs. They're playing prospects that they think may or may not make the roster. There's lots of players being assigned to the AHL. Lots of players going to to their junior teams or the ECHL. Lots of players being cut by teams as well. So there's a lot of player movement going on, and the further we get into preseason, the more rounded we're seeing each of the rosters. Most teams are about halfway through their preseason. We've got another week of preseason before then. The week after that is when the NHL season actually gets underway, which will be great. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah,
As I think most
they're
hockey
just
fans are.
finalising their rosters, really, aren't they, in these
Exactly.
games?
Some notable PTOs that unfortunately haven't gone well for some players include Stefan Nason and Scotty Upshall from the Dallas Stars, I believe, and Eric Greiber. His PTO didn't go so well, but I'm going to talk about him in a little bit more detail later. So the first thing I want to talk about in terms of news, because there isn't, I could go through all the preseason games, but there's a lot of players that won't be on the roster that have scored points or looked good. So follow the NHL, take a look at the app and check out that stuff. I want to talk about Dustin Byfuglien. Now, for those of you who don't know, Dustin Byfuglien asked for a leave of absence from the Winnipeg Jets organization during training camp. He wanted to go and spend some time with his family. It's been reported that he's been considering retirement before the season starts. So there's been a lot of questions as to what Dustin Byfuglien's going to do before the start of the season. Of course, Dustin Byfuglien is an integral part of the Winnipeg Jets defense, considering they lost Tyler Myers, they also lost Jacob Trouba, they lost Joe Morrow, and they also lost Ben Sherratt. So that they've had a really big sort of overhaul of their defensive core this year. I think the only two defensemen that are still there from last year, or the only two notable defensemen, are Josh Morrissey, who signed a big extension with the team recently, and Dmitry Kulikov, who's been bouncing around a few different NHL teams over the last few years. So Byfuglien is very much needed in that group. They've got a few interesting defensemen like Sami Niku coming up. But yeah, Dustin Byfuglien left the team for a leave of absence. He's been in conversations with Paul Maurice, the head coach of the Winnipeg Jets, and of course the Jets are having their own issues with signing Patrick Laine and Kyle Connor. Big discussions there. Laine is training with Mikko Rantanen in Switzerland with SC Bern. But yeah, the big news is that Dustin Byfuglien has been suspended by the Winnipeg Jets for not appearing at training camp. Now, I know that sounds really, really drastic. I know that sounds like a bomb of a headline. It's not what you think it is. The reason why the Winnipeg Jets have suspended Dustin Byfuglien is due to salary cap procedure. The reason they've done that is so that if Dustin Byfuglien decides, oh, I don't actually want to, I want to retire, I don't want to play in the NHL anymore, or it's not the right thing for me to do, then his contract won't count towards the salary cap for this season, which means they free themselves up a nice chunk of change to hopefully sign Laine and Kyle Connor. They can unsuspend him at any point, and his contract will contribute to the salary cap once again. But I just wanted to verify for those of you guys that it was made pretty clear on the on Twitter by several different NHL insiders, and the article that they've got on the NHL website is pretty decent. But yeah, he's just trying to figure out what he wants to do with his life, and I think that's a fair thing for him to do. He's 33 years old. No, he's older than 33. 34. He's 34 years old. He had some injuries last year that he had to deal with. He missed 15 games the start of 2019 and then missed 19 late in the season. So he's obviously a bit banged up, trying to think if playing another season and if it's worth it. But yeah, I don't blame him for taking a leave of absence. So you've got to move on from hockey at some point. You're not going to be playing forever, and your health is the most important thing, I would argue. But yeah, this is just a salary cap move. They haven't suspended him because there's any tension between the two sides. It's merely, if he doesn't actually show up and calls it a day, then his salary doesn't count towards the salary cap. Chris, is there anything you want to add here? Any of your thoughts that you saw when you first saw this article, or?
I mean, when I first saw the article, obviously you see the headline first, and you think, "Oh, what's happened?
Yeah.
What's going on?" And then you read it.
Oh no, not another one. Like
I know, and then you read it, and you think, "Right, okay, was this really necessarily article worthy?" I mean, it's a short news report, of course, but I mean, it leaves his options open, and crucially, it leaves Winnipeg's options open.
Absolutely.
Because if he's temporarily suspended and they have that salary cap space, they can look at players that they know are going to be playing rather than one that might, but equally might turn around and go, "Now, you know what, actually, I'll hang them up."
Because, I mean, they've got two restricted free agents that are top 6 forwards for them that they still haven't signed, and we're halfway through training camp. Patrick Laine, of course, who, when he's not playing Fortnite, he can be a solid 30-40 goal scorer, and Kyle Connor, who's shown progression in every single season he's been in the NHL. So those guys need to get signed or traded if they're not going to be signed. You might have some more salary cap space to work with because they don't have a huge amount of salary cap. And this $5-6 million, I can't remember off the top of my head how much he's earning this season, but he's got 552 points in 869 NHL games. He won a Stanley Cup with Chicago back when he was with the Blackhawks for his first 5 seasons. So he's a guy that the Winnipeg Jets want to have back. They don't want him to retire. They don't want to suspend him. It's merely just a business move. just in case he decides to call it a day. So,
Yeah.
interesting. Thought it was worth mentioning. Thought if any of you were a bit confused as to why that was happening, because if they didn't suspend him and he didn't make his decision until the end of the year, say December 31st, then his contract would still count towards the cap. And that means they've got $5 million, $6 million of dead money just sitting there.
Yeah.
When they could put that towards signing Kyle Connor to a $5 million a year contract or whatever. So, yeah, that's to do with Dustin Byfuglien. Then there was something announced earlier today at 3 p.m, according to this NHL article. Not sure if that's Eastern time or British time. We'll maybe find out. I don't know. So, Eric Greiber.
Well,
I'll go for it.
it can't be Eastern time because that would only be 12 minutes ago.
Fair enough. So it was British time. So Eric Greiber, the defenseman Eric Greiber, who played with the Edmonton Oilers, the Ottawa Senators, and the New Jersey Devils, has announced his retirement from playing in the National Hockey League. So the 31-year-old defenseman, he was actually on a PTO contract, a professional tryout contract, with the Calgary Flames, but was released from that contract on Thursday, and he decided to take to Twitter to announce that he was hanging up his skates. Basically said that he wanted to thank everybody that had been a part of his career up until this point. He was a third-round pick in the 2006 draft. He had 43 points in 289 games with the Senators, the Oilers, and the Devils. He played 10 games with the Devils and had 7 points in 47 games with the Binghamton Senators of the American Hockey League this season, or last season just gone. He mentions in his video that his body is starting to fail a little bit, so this might be due to injuries or some niggling issues that he feels like, especially if he can't find a job securely in the National Hockey League, it might be just worth calling it a day, maybe finding a job elsewhere in the hockey world as a coach or an analyst or a broadcaster, or as a scout or something like that. Maybe work his way up the front office. But yeah, essentially, Eric Greiber's called it a day, somewhat to do with injuries, and I would imagine the fact that he got released from Calgary, that was a factor in it as well. Quite a big factor, I would imagine. He probably had a chat with his family and just decided this is the right thing for me to do. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, nothing lasts forever, and you can't keep playing ice hockey forever. I think, as you said, the fact that Chicago, wasn't it, who didn't... You say Chicago or Calgary?
He last played for Calgary.
Calgary. Because he didn't sign again.
Well, he was released from the PTO contract, so they obviously either weren't impressed enough with his play, or they didn't see him fitting on the roster.
That's what I'm thinking. So he's obviously thinking, in my view, that it's because they didn't think he was fit enough and good enough is the wrong word, but to play.
Yeah.
Because he has decided to retire rather than perhaps chase another side.
Yeah.
So be interesting to see what he does from here, really. Do you look at doing something completely different, or do you, go into the management side of a team? Do you go into punditry? Do you, what do you do from here? It's
absolutely
kind of an interesting one from a lot of kind of ice hockey people. I know that, very, very much more domestically, but quite a lot of players, footballers or stuff, when they get towards the end of the career, they start taking their coaching badges over the summer.
Yeah.
So that they can, keep going and stay in the sport, because particularly if you've been doing it since you were, from under nines, and your schoolwork went around you, particularly if you're in football, you're in an academy or something, and it's all you really know.
Yeah.
Then you've got to kind of stay in it. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the coming, weeks, months, maybe years, because he might take a bit of time off.
Absolutely, and he's probably I would imagine his with the contracts that he's had in the NHL, he's got a bit of money to be able to afford the time to just take a moment, regather himself, because it's a difficult thing. I've never been a professional athlete, and I think my time has passed. But it's a difficult thing to play a game that the only game that you've known, or the only game that you've truly loved for 15 years, 20 years of your life. Maybe you've been skating since you could walk, or you learnt to skate before you could walk, and then you come to the realization of, I'm not going to go to the rink every weekend anymore. I'm not going to go to practices every morning. I'm not going to have to eat a certain way. I'm not going to be under the bright lights of the NHL. I'm not going to score clutch goals and earn a decent amount of money doing it. I have to move, like, my life has changed. Like, of course, they're earning a ton of money. You can't really feel that sorry for them. But at the same time, it's a real change in their lifestyle. So you got to respect it.
I mean,
it's a big decision, especially at 31 years old.
put it this way. Everybody talks, all the political parties, all, political commentators, all the rest of it say that, you've got to ensure a good work-life balance, and this party is going to ensure a better work-life balance. I mean, Labour today have said we're going to have a 4-day working week within 10 years, and for a better work-life balance.
Yeah.
It's a pretty cool job being a professional ice hockey player, but that is still the job. That is still your job. You still need that work, ice hockey, and life balance.
And especially if you're playing 82 games a season, it's tough to find that life balance.
And going all around the country and having a long time away from family and all the rest of it. And, the sport, it's a big part of your life, but you will stop playing at 40 or what have you for the most people.
Yeah, 35,
you will
40.
still have... you'll still have 40 years then for your family, which is the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So you've got to make sure you make time for them. And yes, as Sparky says, you can still play, but not professionally. Yes, of course you can. But then obviously you get to dictate how much you spend, when you do it, and all the rest of it.
And you're not feeling as obliged because you're earning a huge contract to be like, I have to put my body on the line to make sure that I show that I'm worth this money. But, so, Eric Greiber's career has come to an end. Of course, we wish him luck in whatever he does. Maybe he finds a spot somewhere in broadcasting or anything like that. Maybe he becomes an analyst for the Vegas Golden Knights like Mike McKenna did. Shout out to my video yesterday. Go watch it. It's pretty decent.
Yeah, not caught up yet.
It's alright. So, speaking of a career that's ending, let's now move on to a career that's very much going strong. Pretty much the start of something incredible for the Tampa Bay Lightning forward Brayden Point. So there's been a lot of speculation this summer. We've had so many different free agents. Mitch Marner had stopped having his contract discussions because they finally signed it, and I felt like life was great again. But of course, Brayden Point was a very big player also to discuss. I kind of feel like he went a little bit under the radar because the Toronto sports media just wanted to talk about Marner every 0.5 seconds. But finally, a deal was made with the Tampa Bay Lightning and Brayden Point. They signed him to a bridge deal, a 3-year contract worth an average annual value of $6.75 million a season, which is great for the Tampa Bay Lightning for the next 3 years. I mean, considering Brayden Point, 23 years old, former third-round pick. He was a third-round pick in the 2014 draft. Selected 79th overall, 23 years old. He had 92 points last season, and he scored 41 goals. So, by this logic, this is why bridge contracts can be very good for the organisation and maybe less so for the player in this context that I'm about to explain. If Brayden Point scores 90 points for the next 3 seasons, that contract is a steal. Especially considering players are demanding a lot more money as the salary cap goes up each season. If he kind of drops a little bit, maybe flattens out to 60, 70 points a season, which I don't think will happen, but it might happen, you never know. 60, 70 points for $6-7 million a year is okay. That's not too bad, especially considering we've got guys being signed for $10 million a year at this point. And say if he gets 90 points every single season, say even 100 points. Say he hits 100 points in 2 of the next 3 seasons, has 90 points the other year. He's going to get his payday. He's going to get a fantastic payday. And there's going to be a lot of teams interested if he's either an RFA or a UFA in signing him. And he's going to go 10 million plus. He's going to be considered one of the best players in the league. If he doesn't and kind of slumps a little bit, Tampa Bay can then sign him to a more team-friendly contract, if that's still a possibility, because he's dropped off a little bit. Maybe he doesn't have a career year as much as he did last year. And then he earns a little bit less, but then that works out for the team, So I think this is a very good contract for the Tampa Bay Lightning. I think that's a brilliant contract for them. I think Braden Point will far surpass this contract and will be due for a very big payday. I think he didn't want to be out of the Lightning lineup before the regular season started. He'd already missed half of training camp, so I would imagine he very much wanted to be part of that team. He's played in 229 NHL games and scored 198 points. So he's almost a point per game in his career so far, over 3 seasons. So he's a kind of guy, he's already been to an All-Star game. He's played in 21 playoff games and scored 17 points. He's doing a fantastic job for this team. I do not expect Braden Point to slow down at all over the next 3 seasons. He joins Zach Werenski, Charlie McAvoy, Brandon Carlo, those kind of players that have signed those bridge deals. And yeah, I think this is a contract that works out for both sides. Braden Point might be a little bit annoyed by the end of this contract that he might not be being paid enough, but these bridge deals are very much loaded at the back. I was watching Tim and Sid earlier this week. Shout out to Tim and Sid. I quite liked them. They're a decent show. They showed the contract breakdown for each of the years on Brock Besser's contract. They load these contracts at the back. So Braden Point, for example, I don't have the exact numbers here of his contract, but he might be earning $10 million in the last season of his contract. If that's the case, if he goes to salary arbitration and he was earning $10 million the season before, from what I'm aware of and from what I recall them saying, don't quote me on this, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure this is what they said. The arbitrator can't offer him a contract less than the money he was earning that last year of his contract. So if he goes to salary arbitration and goes, I want more money because I've played fantastically for your team these last 3, 4, 5 years, the arbitrator has to go, okay, so you're earning at least $10 million for your average annual value for the rest of your contract, which is great for Braden Point, obviously. Anyway, I've very much rambled on about that. Chris, do you have any thoughts on that?
Only the one, which I think that Tampa can't really lose on this, because I think it's expected that he's going to outshine the contract, but equally he's being paid not the 10 million deal that if they think if he only gets 60, 70 points, they're going to think, oh, we haven't got our money's worth out of it.
Yeah.
So I think they can't lose.
No, exactly. And we've also got to remember he's playing with the likes of Kucherov, Stamkos, and all the other Tampa Bay Lightning forwards that they have, which are known for their offensive firepower. Like, you've got to think of it this way, like, he scored 90 points last season, and he's their second-line centre. They had Steven Stamkos as well. Like, this just adds, of course, last season, considering how awfully it went for them in the playoffs, like, you still got to be really impressed with how well they played. And Braden Point was a big reason for them playing so well in the regular season and tying the most wins in a season. Or I can't remember, did they set a new record for most wins in a season, or did they tie it? I think they tied it.
They tied it.
Yeah, I think we talked about it, didn't we?
They tied it, but Detroit did it when they were playing fewer games, if I remember right.
Yes, I think you're right. Yeah. Like 2 less games, 3 less games.
Yeah, it was the 92 Red Wings or something.
Yeah, I think it was in part of our end of season quiz. But anyway, it was. Braden Point gets a contract. He'll be with the team for the rest of training camp, which will help him and let Lightning fans breathe a sigh of relief. So fair play to him. That's very helpful for them. So congratulations, Braden Point. You're going to outshine that contract anyway, I have no doubts. Then we move on to an interesting topic that I thought I'd mention to you guys. A little bit of news that I saw over this last week. Thought I'd bring it up to you guys before we move on to Brits Abroad. Then after Brits Abroad is the audience questions. So start thinking of your questions now. That'll probably make more sense for us. We'll go through some of them. We'll have a chat about them.
We won't have long, so get them in now. We won't have long,
but get your questions ready for when we get to that point. Jaromir Jagr. Some of you might remember that cheeky Czech.
The Beast.
Absolutely, that has played pretty much since the dawn of time. He is 47 years old. He left the league last season after a short stint with the Calgary Flames, and injuries derailed that stint there. He is now playing in the Czech League with Ratiri Kladno, which is the team he owns in the Czech League. He's not like he owns the team, so he can play whenever he wants on that team. And he scored a goal. 47-year-old Jaromir Jagr is still scoring goals, and this is his 20th pro season, something like that. He's 47 years old. No, it wouldn't be his 20th pro season. It would have been 27 20 years ago. This is like his 27th pro season, 28th, 29th. So he's already said several years ago that he wants to play until he's 50. I have a feeling that's going to happen. I would not be surprised if he did like a Gordie Howe when he's 50 years old, come and play one game for the Penguins. So, yeah. I mean, he's always been a guy that's been dedicated to training and keeping his body fit and healthy. He's dedicated to the sport of hockey. So, fair play to Jaromir Jagr. I thought that would be an interesting thing to mention. Now let's move on to Brits abroad. Da-da-da-da-da.
Da-da-da-da-da.
So for those of you who don't know, or are watching the podcast for the first time, Brits abroad is where we look at some of the players and head coaches and people in British hockey or who have played or been part of British hockey, either active players, head coaches, that have come from our league or come up through the system, that are now playing abroad, hence the name Brits abroad. And we like to just keep updated with how they're doing. We find it quite interesting, and we figure some of you guys might find it quite interesting too. And it's can be somewhat difficult to try and remember to find the information every week, so we do the job for you. So you're welcome. So Chris, take us through Brits abroad, would you please?
Right, let's start with Liam Kirk.
Woo!
Who has so far he's back with Peterborough after the training camp in Arizona.
The Peterborough.
He's played 2, scored 2, got 1 assist, and a +3 ±. So 3 points from 2 games so far. So he's had a great start to the season.
Absolutely.
Then we've got Paul Thompson and his Schweiniger Wild Wings.
Damn right.
They are 1-3 to start the season, but one of those was an overtime loss. They are 12 out of 14 after 4 games.
And that's in the DEL, so the
Yes.
top flight of German hockey.
Yes. Corey Nielsen's side, Lausitzer Fuchs. They are 8th in the league. 1 win, 2 overtime losses, but in the DEL and the DEL2 you get 3 points for a win, 2 for an overtime win, 1 for an overtime loss, and nothing for a reg loss.
And this is in the DEL2.
This is in the DEL2. They're 8th in the league, 1 win, 2 overtime losses, so 5 points. There was also over the weekend a goal for Robert Farmer on that side and an assist for Mike Hammond.
Hey, good job,
And then
boys.
we go to Pete Russell, whose Freiburg side are also in the DEL2. You remember they opened their account against Corey Nielsen's side.
Yep.
They are 3-1. They have 9 points and are top of the league.
And their only loss coming to Corey Nielsen's side, I believe.
On the opening weekend, yeah.
There you go. So they've done pretty well since then. So all in all, the Brits are doing pretty well. I mean, Paul Thompson's struggling a little bit, obviously, in the DEL to start the season. But Kirky's doing fantastic. He's getting top 6 and top line minutes. Playing incredibly well for the Pete. I wouldn't be surprised if he went a point per game this season. He's 19 years old, obviously. He's got that extra year of seasoning in the OHL. He knows how the game is played. He knows he's also got an extra year of maturity, both mentally and physically. Like, he's maturing as an adult, so he's got he's working a lot better than he would have been when he first went over last year. So he's doing a fantastic job. And our DEL2 sides are doing pretty well for themselves as well, especially Pete Russell. Like, he's showing that his strategies, they worked well for the Brayhead clan and the Glasgow clan. They worked well for Team GB this last summer, and they're working well in Germany. So you can't really complain with that. So that takes us to the last call. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is where we take your questions in the chat. We have been looking at the chat throughout the live stream. We apologise if we haven't been really taking too much from it. It's because we have our fair share of stuff to discuss. So give us your questions quick as you can, and we'll get through them. So
You haven't mentioned BOB, or are you doing that right at the end?
Oh, that's a good point. I'll do that after audience questions. Thank you for reminding me, Chris. I appreciate it.
What teams do you think is going to come top 4 in the league and bottom 2? So who's going to be the top 4 and who's not going to make the playoffs?
Coventry's not going to make the playoffs.
No.
And I'm not sure about the other team. I want to say
the other
Dundee.
the other team is difficult because everybody is beating everybody.
I want to say Dundee because I think it'll catch up to them, especially because,
Check that they
like, looking
still
at their
haven't
lines,
done
I think they're the only team in the league that play with 3
Breaking
forward
news,
lines.
breaking news, breaking news.
What?
Elite League Player of the Week for Week 4
Oh,
is Kevin Dufour of the Dundee Stars.
okay, so they got a Stars player, that's good, but I think your choice was
So
better.
he had 4 goals over the weekend.
Okay.
He had 3 assists in the 5-3 win against Manchester last night for a
Okay.
+2 over the weekend. So 4 goals and a +2 is Kevin Dufour is Week 4 Player of the Week.
There you go. Okay then, fair enough. I still think it should have been Leclerc, but that's just me and Chris. So, especially 68 saves.
One
Yeah.
game,
So
yeah.
top 4, I'm probably gonna say quite similar to last year. Belfast, Cardiff, Nottingham, and I'll throw Sheffield in there.
To the arena teams.
Basically, yeah. I mean, have you seen the? I mean, they're decent teams. Yeah,
Well, yes, I
would that
know.
surprise anybody if they got in the top 4? I don't think so.
I think Belfast and Cardiff definitely.
Okay.
You see, Fife and Glasgow look so strong at the start of the season.
Glasgow is a good choice. Glasgow might take over Sheffield, in my opinion, but I think Nottingham's a lock for a top 4.
I think it's, yeah,
I think Fife could come 5th.
I think it's going to be 4 of Cardiff, Belfast, Nottingham, Sheffield, then Glasgow and Fife.
Okay.
4 of those 6. At the bottom, I think Coventry and, yeah, probably Dundee or Guildford.
Nah, Guildford's going to be underdog team. I'm calling it now.
Is that what you're
Say it every
saying?
year, and I'm not disappointed.
That is very true. You're never
They
disappointed.
have done nothing but impressive things since they joined the league. They have never been a team that you can get an easy win from.
That's true. That's true.
So
Yeah, we did say who we thought were going to get to the Challenge Cup playoffs, and I think we said who the underdogs were going to be as well, didn't we?
My
In the
underdog
first.
is Guildford.
Your underdog's Guildford. I think the piece of paper's on the other side of the house. I'm not getting
Yeah,
up.
go watch the first podcast if you want to have those questions answered.
Yeah.
Score predictions for the weekend coming up. There's far too many games for us to talk about.
There is. There's far too many. We can't go for every single one.
No, so if we have one more question, we'll answer that. If not, I will give you the final piece of news and we will finish up. So, any more questions? Any more? Do you think that Liam Kirk will crack the NHL? We've talked about this a couple of times.
We did a little last week, didn't we? I think it depends on his development over the next 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then he might get a shot, being called up through injury and something. I don't think he's going to come out of Peterborough in 2 years' time and get a roster spot.
No.
But I think he might well get an opportunity in for injury or in the pre-season games to try and show what he's all about.
Yep.
I think the more likely step is for him to go from Peterborough to the AHL.
Absolutely, yep.
And then potentially get a crack. But
or
he
might
knows?
just become the next Gretzky. You never know.
Or he might. Yes, he might.
My opinion is very similar. He's an absolute long shot to make the NHL. I mean, he was a 7th round pick for a reason. Then again, 7th round picks have made the NHL and had very successful careers. Henrik Lundqvist. So, I mean, he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. So, it doesn't matter where you're drafted sometimes. It's what you do after that. And if you get a little bit lucky. And the last question we'll take is Stanley Cup winners this season.
Toronto.
Not a chance. If Toronto,
for anyone who doesn't know, I'm a Maple Leafs fan. Hence the.
If Toronto win the Stanley Cup this year, I'm going to do a video on my channel, especially for you, saying how great the Toronto Maple Leafs are. Like, I'm willing to double down on that.
Toronto.
I mean, they're a good team, but I don't think it's going to happen.
No.
Maybe second round. I could see them going through to the second round unless they play the
we'll get
Bruins
Boston in the first round and lose in 7.
If they play the Boston Bruins in the first round, then sorry, Leafs. Which brings us onto our
Speaking
final
of the Boston
topic.
Bruins.
This is a fantastic segue, me. Thank you. So, for those of you who don't know, we do the Icing on the Skate podcast here on the Odd Man Rush YouTube channel. However, the start of the NHL season this next week has also brought a new opportunity for both myself and Chris. We have joined the Hockey Podcast Network, which is a brand new network that's starting up for the 1920 season, where podcasters and YouTubers from around the hockey world, mostly in North America, I think we're one of the only ones outside of North America, which is pretty cool for us. Basically, what they're doing is they're going to have a podcast for every single NHL team throughout the entire season, 2 episodes a week for the entirety of the season for every NHL team. Now, Chris and I are very lucky to be doing the Boston Bruins podcast for the Hockey Podcast Network this upcoming season. We have nicely titled it, and this was Chris's title, so give him props if you like it. Brits on Bruins, which I think is a great name. So we're going to do the Brits on Bruins podcast. Our first episode is going out next Monday. We're going to record it tomorrow. So do go and follow our Twitter for it, at Brits on Bruins, because we want to have audience questions and some questions from you guys on our Twitter that we will address in our first or second podcast. So do check out at Brits on Bruins. I'll tweet about it later this evening if you've got me on Twitter, at OddmanRushYT. You can see it like right there. Also, I'm going to put it on YouTube, like the community section of my YouTube channel, so you'll be able to see it there as well. I would love you guys to follow it, keep an eye on it. Even if you're not a Boston Bruins fan, but you're a fan of what we do on our podcast, it's going to be like this, but purely Boston Bruins based. So you got the information, you'll have the stats, you'll have the discussions, you'll have the awful jokes. You'll have a bit of everything, but it's Boston Bruins based. So even if you're not a Bruins fan, but maybe want to learn more about the Bruins, because I'm not primarily a Bruins fan, and neither is Chris. I'm a New York Rangers fan first, and he's a Toronto Maple Leafs fan first. So we're going to be learning a lot about the Bruins as we go along as well. So perhaps come and join that journey with us. I believe the episode's going to be on Spotify as well, which is going to be pretty cool. I will double check that with the people who run the network, obviously, and I'll get that double checked. But yeah, do check out at Brits on Bruins. That would be really awesome if you could go and take a look at that. Follow us on Twitter. Leave us any thoughts or questions that you have for our first episode that we're going to record tomorrow. So it's a new exciting opportunity for us. We're going to be very interested to see how the Bruins do this year. Of course, their Stanley Cup Finals appearance, 1 win away from winning the Cup last year. So yeah, it's going to be fun. And I've had to bring Chris along for the ride because he would get very upset if I didn't bring him. So,
am I going to be the punching bag on this as well?
I'll be a lot nicer to you on the other one.
Oh, that's nice.
Because I feel like that's more official than this one. Whereas this one's more like I could just kind of take the mick out of you every once in a while. But I like the fact that you do it back sometimes as well. You know, we've got to be fair here on the Icing on the Skate podcast. But anyway, we're going to call that an episode, I think. Season 2, episode 3. Thank you very much for watching, guys. I hope you have enjoyed the podcast. Remember, we do this podcast every week at 7 p.m. British time, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific time. Keep an eye out for the Brits on Bruins podcast. That'll be coming out very soon, within the next week or so. Yeah, it'll be a week today that the first episode comes out. So keep an eye out for that. We'll obviously plug it like crazy next week. Remind me to do that, Chris, because we will have had our first episode out. Go and check out the video I uploaded yesterday if you haven't done so already. It's an alright one. People seem to like it. So, yeah. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you again next week to talk all things Elite Ice Hockey League,
What
NHL.
time will the podcast be out? We don't know, do we?
Good question.
We'll find out.
I would imagine it'll go up in the... I think it's going up Sunday evening. Or like being uploaded for the Monday morning. So I'll double check.
Not sure.
That
we'll ask the guys.
If you drop me a question on Brits on Bruins Twitter, then I can answer it for you. So there you go. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Hope you've enjoyed. We'll see you again next week. But for now, goodbye.